Hello, everybody. This is our third lecture in the course of English literary texts. So far, we have looked at two poems. First one was the Ode by William Wordsworth, and the second one was Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Now, this is our third poem, and starting from next lecture, we're going to read prose like short stories. So, our third poet is William Blake, and you can see the dates. He was born 1757 and died 1827. So, more or less, the same era of William Wordsworth. William Blake is a very famous English poet, and he had his own philosophy. We're doing today the Nurse's Songs. Let's talk a bit about William Blake, his career. Now, his literary input, contribution, covers a wide range of poetic forms. He tried his hand at several poetic forms, from the very short lyric to the long epic. In all his works, he strongly emphasized the primacy, the importance, the priority of creativity and the imagination. When we say imagination, it's what we translate as ملكة الخيال. Now, the priority or the importance of creativity and the imagination were the most important values to him as a poet and a pictorial artist. You know, William Blake was not only a poet, he was also a painter, an engraver, a printer. So he was a multi-talented person. He also emphasized other things in addition to the importance of creativity and the imagination. He emphasized the individual experience, that every person in this universe has their own individual experience, and therefore there are individualized responses to life and art. So every person responds to life and art in an individual way. And that was very important also for Blake. He appreciated the life of the spirit, in other words, the spiritual side, and disdained, looked down upon materialism, because again, that was the time of the Industrial Revolution. So most of the poets celebrated the spiritual side of humanity and looked down upon the material side. What about Blake critically? How is he viewed by critics? It's well known that Blake was a man and an artist of a rebellious spirit. That is, his spirit was revolutionary. Rebellion was there, inherent in his personality. So he advocated, he called for revolution and opposition to all kinds of rigid systems, rigid fixed systems, artistic, cultural, social, political, moral, religious, etc. What does this mean? For him, these rigid systems could curb, limit, control the free spirit and the imagination. Remember what we said here? That he emphasized the primacy of creativity and imagination. He also celebrated the individual experience and individualized responses to life and art. Therefore, it's only logical that he would call for the opposition to all kinds of rigid systems and fixed ideas which might curb, control the free spirit of the artist and imagination. Well, actually, critics sometimes viewed Blake as an eccentric man. So, in addition to this rebellious spirit and the advocation of revolting against all fixed systems in order to liberate the spirit and the imagination, Blake was perceived or viewed critically as an eccentric man, even mad. Why? Because he claimed to have seen visions, and you can see the word visions is between inverted commas. He claimed to have seen visions ever since he was a young boy. And he confirmed that these were not hallucinations, but real visions. Well, of course, this is an issue open to debate. Was he suffering from some kind of mental disorder or disturbance, or were those visions the result of the outcome of a highly, exceptionally vivid, alive imagination? It's a debate and it remains controversial. But that's why he was perceived critically as an eccentric man. Well, what we care about is his poetry, actually, his poetry and the philosophy that we can read in his poetry. At the end of the day, artists have their own unique way. Now, let's see the poems, and yes, I mean to say poems, because we're doing two poems by Blake. These are taken from a volume entitled Songs of Innocence and Experience, showing the contrary states of the human soul. This is the whole title of the volume, what you can see on the left side. Songs of Innocence and Experience, البراءة والتجربة, showing the contrary states of the human soul. Now, the title of the volume corresponds to the vision of the poet himself. What does he mean by this? Here is what he believes. He believes that humankind, human beings, and the way we perceive universe, life, cannot be unilateral. What is the meaning of unilateral? One thing, the same, unified, unchangeable. Because actually, we do change the way we perceive life and the universe. With every age, for example, we change our perception of what we have around us. And the more experience we have, the more understanding we have of our surroundings. So our perception cannot be unilateral. Of course, the opposite of unilateral, uni, the first syllable, uni comes from the word unified. Of course, the opposite would be multilateral. So as one gains or attains more intellectual and spiritual maturity, one becomes more able to see the truths that matter in life. Therefore, our vision becomes multilateral, and that's very natural and normal. We change our views with maturity, with age, with experience. We change our views. So all this is reflected in the title of the volume, Songs of Innocence and Experience, showing the contrary states of the human soul. Let's talk about the volume in general before we delve into the two poems. Now, the themes of the volume, Songs of Innocence and Experience, vary. They are very different. You can have nursery rhymes, something like أغاني الأطفال, to philosophical contemplations. We have the life of the poor and the trampled, those who are crushed in life, injustice, suffering, and hypocrisy in society, and questionings of family, moral, and religious systems. So you can see the volume deals with several themes just to show the contrary states of the human soul. Now, these poems first appeared in two separate collections. The first collection was Songs of Innocence, that was 1789, then Songs of Experience, 1794. Then later they were published together in a single volume. And ever since that time, critics have been dealing with that as one volume. Many poems in this volume are described as companion pieces, which means what? Two poems, for example, okay? They deal with the same theme, yet from two different perspectives, from two different points of view. Or they could be two poems that complement each other. بيكملوا بعض. Okay, so this is what we call companion pieces. Not all the volume, but many poems in the volume were described so. And actually, we're doing in this lecture two companion poems. Here they are. And they have the title of the two nurse songs. This is how every critic refers to those two poems. So we have one of innocence and one of experience. Let's first read both of those poems to get the feel and the mood. And then we move, of course, into our detailed discussion. When the voices of children are heard on the green and laughing is heard on the hill, My heart is at rest within my breast, and everything else is still. Then, come home, my children, the sun is gone down, and the dews of night arise. Come, come, leave off play, and let us away till the morning appears in the skies. No, no, let us play, for it is yet day, and we cannot go to sleep. Besides, in the sky, the little birds fly, and the hills are all covered with sheep. Well, well, go and play till the light fades away, and then go home to bed. The little one slept and shouted and laughed, and all the hills echoed. Question: how many voices do we hear in this poem? When the voices of children are heard on the green, and laughing is heard on the hill, my heart is at rest within my breast, and everything else is still. So we have this person who says, my heart is at rest within my breast, and everything else is still. When what happens? When the voices of children are heard on the green and laughing is heard on the hill. So apparently we have one person who is speaking and children are playing. Then we have the rest of the poem. We have, this is a sort of a conversation, a dialogue between this mature person and the children. The children is trying to bargain to spend more time playing, and this person is telling them, you should go to sleep now. But apparently, at the end, this person, the mature person, gives in and allowed the children to have more time to play. And we can understand this from the last two lines. The little ones, this is the children, leaped and shouted and laughed, and all the hills echoed. So we begin the poem by laughing is heard on the hill. There is laughing that is heard on the hill. And the end of the poem, they laughed and all the hills echoed. This is the song of innocence. Let's move to the other one, song of experience. When the voices of children are heard on the green, and whisperings are in the dale, the days of my youth rise fresh in my mind. My face turns green and pale. Then come home, my children, the sun is gone down, and the dews of night arise. Your spring and your day are wasted in play, and your winter and night in disguise. The first thing we notice is that this poem is shorter than the first one. The second point, I want to repeat the same question. How many voices do we hear in this poem? It's just one voice, the voice of the mature person. When the voices of children are heard on the green and whisperings are in the dale, the days of my youth rise fresh in my mind. So this mature person is remembering their early life. And this kind of memory results in my face turns green and pale, which of course signifies pain. Then come home, my children, the sun is gone down and the dews of night arise. Now, in the first poem, when this mature person, and most probably this is like the nanny, the woman who is taking care of those children. So when this was said in the first poem, come home, my children, the sun is gone down, and the dews of night arise, the same was said. Come, come, leave off play, and let us away till the morning appears in the skies. The children started bargaining, and they said, no, no, let us play, for it is yet day, and we cannot go to sleep. But in the Song of Experience, the second poem, when she said that, nobody answered. She's thinking, your spring and your day are wasted in play, and your winter and night in disguise. Of course, notice the contrast. Spring day, winter night. These are symbols. We will deal with that. So in the first poem, which is the Song of Innocence, we hear the voices of children. We hear their laughing on the hills. And even at the end of the poem, all the hills echoed. So there is here an atmosphere of joy, play, laughs. This is the innocence of children who are playing. But in the second poem, which is very short, shorter in comparison to the first poem, in the second poem, we only hear the voice of the nanny, the mature nanny, the voices of children reminded her of her youth. The days of my youth rise fresh in my mind. Now, when she remembered that, she said, my face turns green and pale. So apparently she remembered something that caused her pain in her life. Then come home, my children. And then she thinks, your spring and your day are wasted in play. Why not? That's normal. That's normal for children to waste their spring and day in play. And your winter and night in disguise. Winter and night are disguised. They are about to come. So let them play. Let's see. The first stanza, we have the voices of the children. Laughing is heard on the hill. And this laughing makes the heart of the nanny at rest, peaceful. This laughing provides her with a peaceful feeling, and everything else is still. So what we only hear is the laughing of the children and their voices. Then come home, my children, the sun is gone down, and the dews of night arise. Come, come, leave off play, and let us away, till the morning appears in the skies. Of course, she's telling them, stop playing. We now need to go home, and let's wait until tomorrow morning. Stanza 3, they reply to the nanny, the children, no, no, let us play, for it is yet day, and we cannot go to sleep. Besides, in the sky, the little birds fly, and the hills are all covered with sheep. So the nature is still awake. Why should we go to bed now? The birds are flying and the sheep are all over the place. Well, in the last stanza, she gives in. She accepts. Well, go and play till the light fades away, and then go home to bed. When she said that, how did the children react? The little ones leaped and shouted and laughed, and all the hills echoed. So this is a song of experience where the poem begins with the voices of children and they're laughing, and it ends with the voices of children and they're laughing with the echo of this on the hills. That is, nature again is happy along with those children. Remember the importance of the child of joy in William Wordsworth? So again, we have here the same innocence of the children. So we have two voices in Song of Experience. The poem explores how the moods of adults, poet or the nurse or the nanny, are related to those of children. So we have actually not only moods, but also two perspectives. Of course, in the poem, the mind, the consciousness, the voice of the nurse has the upper hand. It's the predominant voice. Yet the wishes of the children, no, let us play, are allowed. They are allowed. So they won over the nurse. We need to go back to the voice of the nurse. She's reassured, which means she's calm. She's at peace with herself and with the world. My heart rests at peace in my breast. The voice is motherly, caring, loving, and tender. What about the voice of the children? Innocent? I would say loud. Of course, their voices were very loud and their laughs till the hills echoed. Carefree, play-loving, which is expected of children. Now, this poem, the first poem, portrays an ideal, balanced state of existence. Innocence, unaffected by experience. This is complete innocence. We don't find any experience here. This is the innocence of the children who want to play. And we have two voices, the voice of the nurse and the voices of the children, and there is a very happy mood in the poem. What about the second poem, Songs of Experience? And it's two stanzas only, while the first poem consists of 4 stanzas. Song of Experience consists of 2 stanzas. When the voices of children are heard on the green and whisperings are in the dell, the days of my youth rise fresh in my mind, my face turns green and pale. So against the backdrop means خلفية. Against the backdrop of the voices of children, their laughing, their play, against this backdrop, the nurse starts recalling her days of youth. But when this happens, her face turns green and pale, and that would be that would be the meaning of some pain, a proof that her memory contains pain. Now, I want you to notice the use of the word green. The first line, when the voices of children are heard on the green. Now, this is very positive because they are playing, and even in the first poem, we understood that the green hill is covered with sheep. So this is positive. But in the last line, when the memory of this nurse started working, her face turns green and pale. So green here is a sign of pain. There is something that she remembered and it caused her pain. So you see, you can use the same word in the same stanza with two completely different, even contrasting meanings. Then come home, my children, the sun is gone down, and the dews of night arise. Now this is what she said also in the first poem. But she is still contemplating, reflecting. Now the result of this, the days of my youth rise fresh in my mind. My face turns green and pale. This memory, this painful memory, caused her to think of the following. Your spring and your day are wasted in play. So, of course, spring here and day are related to innocence, the innocence of the children. And your winter and night in disguise. Winter and night, symbols of experience. Of course, we also have here a personification of winter and night. They are personified as someone in disguise. So you cannot recognize him. So winter and night are not only related to experience, but also to pain. Of course, experience in our life means pain. Experience does not come without pain. So in this poem, which consists of only 2 stanzas, we hear only the voice of the nurse, which is completely different, of course, from the voices of the children. We get the vision of an adult, a mature person, who understands and evaluates the experience of childhood from a mature perspective. The poem invites the reader to draw conclusions about the inevitable course of human life. We are bound to encounter experience. This is the meaning of the inevitable course of human life. The poem also invites the reader to think of how one invested one's energies and resources in one's more youthful days. The poem invites us to think of the way we spent our very early days. Actually, the poem invites us to go back and think of our childhood. Unlike Song of Innocence, unlike the earlier version, there is only one speaker here, while in Song of Innocence we have two speakers, two voices. The voice of the nurse, aided by memory, sounds more brooding, which is very close to reflective, contemplative. And we don't get this feeling in the first poem, only in the second poem that we can hear the voice of the nurse, really reflective and contemplative. She's very serious. We hear her voice in this poem, the second poem, very serious and somber. She has some grim. Grim is very close to dull, dark, depressing. She has some depressing ideas about her own life. What exactly, we don't know, but when her memory started working, she said, my face turns green and pale. So this is the meaning of companion poems. These are two poems, and they are given to us from different perspectives. And we hear different voices. One relates to innocence and the other relates to experience. In the two poems, we can see nature clearly. And in the whole volume by Blake, Songs of Innocence and Experience, nature has different meanings, very different meanings in relation to the development of human experience. So in the Innocence version, Song of Innocence, the poem we have read, we have all the natural elements. We see children are playing on the green hill, the birds are flying. So everything about nature in Song of Innocence, the first poem, signal that the entire universe is in a state of perfect harmony. The children and universe are together in harmony. Everything is fine in the world. Now, when we read the second poem, Song of Experience, where we have only the voice of the nurse, references to the natural world and cycles of the seasons are menacing, a bit disturbing. And the example, of course, is night and disguise. Your winter and night are in disguise. These are ominous reminders of the effect of losing innocence. She's thinking of the future of these children. So nature takes also contrasting meanings in both poems. In the first poem, everything is in harmony. In the second poem, there are signs of dangers in relation to nature. If you remember the title of the volume, showing the contrary states of the human soul, Songs of Innocence and Experience, then also nature in the whole volume is taking two contrasting meanings. One, it could be the benign, the kind, the merciful cradle place of the human soul. in its unspoiled state of innocence. Or nature could be the dangerous theater of conflicting, potentially evil forces that the human soul is destined to emerge into in the material world. That is, number one corresponds to the state of innocence. Number two corresponds to the state of experience. So nature here is very important. We need to look at how Blake portrayed nature in the nurse songs. Two contrasting pictures to show two contrasting states of humanity, innocence and experience. So as you can see, the poems look very simple, but they have a lot, we can say a lot about them. And that was about William Blake. That was all. So let me remind you again of the title of those two poems, nurse songs. One is Song of Innocence and one is Song of Experience. We need to remember how William Blake allowed several voices to appear in those two poems, and how by dealing with the same subject in two poems, one from the perspective of innocence, another from the perspective of experience, how he managed to convey his philosophy that humankind and the way it perceives the universe cannot be unilateral. That is to say, the nurse was like those children one day, but now she has gained experience and she has another vision. So one's vision becomes multilateral. She accepted the fact that the children want to stay more and play. She accepted that, but at the same time, she has a different perception of the universe. And that was all about William Blake, the nurse songs. In this way, we have looked at three poems. Starting from next time, we'll need to look at some prose. The first thing that comes to mind when we say prose is something like a short story or a scene from a play or even an excerpt from a novel. Of course, we cannot do anything else because the course, and I'm reminding you, it's called English Literary Texts, أدبية, نصوص أدبية. So that's why we're going to next time to do some literary prose.